Thank you, Brooke. First of all, I want to thank CVEP for the invitation today. It's really a tremendous privilege. I want to thank Randy and Joe, for that really exceptional presentation and inspiring presentation about the future of the Valley. My name is Kome Ajise, and I'm the Executive Director of the Southern California Association of Governments. My presentation today is really intended to provide some regional context. I want to provide some regional context. First of all, we'll talk about what SCAG is, what we do at SCAG, and talk about our primary document that we produce at SCAG, the Regional Transportation Plan that we call Connect SoCal, and we'll give some regional context of the economy, at least what we have seen from SCAG's perspective on the economy, and then I want to focus on the issues of Coachella Valley. For those who don't know, SCAG is the Metropolitan Planning Organization for the 6-county region that includes 191 cities. So our membership includes 191 cities, the 6 counties, and 6 county commissions as well. We're the nation's largest metropolitan planning organization. We cover an area of about 39,000 square miles and a population of about 19 million, which is almost half the population of California. We're the nation's global gateway for trade, and we, as a primary assignment at SCAG, we developed the Regional Transportation Plan, which we call Connect SoCal. SCAG also, in terms of the economy, we have an economy of about 1.2 trillion, which is substantial on any, or by any measure. So it's a vibrant, probably one of the, if not the most vibrant economic region of the country. However, we also have some issues to deal with. This region accounts for 67% of the disadvantaged population for the entire state of California. At SCAG, our mission is to foster innovation or innovative regional solutions that improve the lives of all Southern Californians. What we do really at SCAG is to provide this regional voice, and I take Joe's point about working together to elevate. It's really what we do at SCAG is to provide this regional voice such that we have enough of a critical mass to make the point both in Sacramento and Washington. We provide a unique regional forum for conversation. We also help our regional members, our cities and counties, with their data in terms of making decisions at the local level. Our regional transportation plan that we call Connect SoCal is really the unifying document, a vision document for our region. This plan has about 10 goals to it, and I will just run through some of them. One is to maximize my infrastructure. What that means is to provide the best optimized infrastructure to enable this our regional economy to thrive. We talk about expanding mobility choices because through that opportunity that mobility choices provide, many more of our community members can't access the unique opportunities that are available in our region. We talk about encouraging affordable housing production, preservation, and production and protection. Because we know that housing is where jobs go to sleep, we need to make sure that we're providing workforce housing to be able to maintain the talent pool that we have in our region to maintain our economy. And we also talk about, especially in this time of COVID, the COVID recession that we've seen, we're talking about fostering an inclusive economic recovery to enable us to have that robust economy that we have so come to enjoy up until February. And we also, in all of this, in this context, we're doing this, balancing all of this to make sure that we also enable a livable environment, a safe and healthy environment in which to live, such that we're making all of our communities resilient through the various experiences that we have. Connect SoCal, as we call the plan, is really a compass. It's not a roadmap. It's really it's a vision for the future. It's not guaranteed. However, we think it's a platform for that collaboration that we think we enable at SCAG. At SCAG, we have all of our regional members represented. We have an 86 member board that represents the entire region, and so it's where local government comes to collaborate to get things done. And this particular document allows us to be able to do that. Now, SCAG respects local control and relies on this partnership and public stakeholdership to develop and implement Connect SoCal. We expect to see growth in our region, at least in our plan. We're showing that over time, between now and 2045, that the plan covers. We expect to see about over 3 million more people added to our population in Southern California. We expect to see over 1.5 million more households in our region. We expect to see a dramatic shift in our demography, where we expect by 2045, 1 in 5 residents will be 65 or older. This happens to be the fastest growing age group in our demography, and it presents unique opportunities and if not handled right, obviously some unique concerns as well. So, given all of that, we also have a number of challenges. This slide sort of identifies some challenges, not all of them. We face numerous challenges in achieving the safe, sustainable, and integrated system of transportation that we've talked about, and to maintain those livable conditions that we've talked about. We spend way too much time stuck in traffic still in our region, and we are rapidly losing farmland in our region. Equity concerns obviously are also high on our agenda as a matter of concern. We have 78% of the population that live in flood hazard areas, being minorities or people of color, and those raise some equity concerns. We still have too many people lost in automobile accidents. The plan proposes to spend about $640 billion in expenditure and investments in transportation. What to note, especially in this plan, is the fact that almost half of it, about 49% of the expenditure, is really intended to operate and maintain what we already have. And so that notion of fix it first is important. We like to tell people that the infrastructure of the future, most of it is already here. And what we add is at the margins, and we want to make sure that what we add actually makes a difference in how we enable ourselves to be able to continue to grow our economy. What the plan does is it sort of projects and tries to be sustainable in its outlook, and we established a number of what we call priority growth areas, and these are identified on this particular slide. These are job centers. These are high quality transit areas. The priority growth areas are places where we expect to see growth more focused, such that we can enable and engender the capacity we already have built in those areas and use them more optimally. It provides guidance to local government, to local jurisdictions on implementing these sustainable land use policies through their general plans and zoning codes. The plan strategies are really divided into two buckets. And these two buckets are important to note because oftentimes when you do a plan, people expect it to be so radically different. But in fact, you find out there are some things that are actually working that you've done in the past. Those things we call the core vision. Core vision items are things that SCAG is continuing to invest in through our county transportation commissions and local jurisdictions. These are things they've done in the past that continue to work, focusing on system preservation and resilience, maintaining our investment in transit as a backbone, as an alternative to driving alone, making sure that we enable our streets to be complete. What we mean by complete streets is to invest in street improvement such that you can have multiple use for the street prism, for the roadway prism in all of our jurisdictions, where you can drive, you can have transit, but you can also walk and bike. That's the essence of a complete streets, and do those things safely. And then there are key connections. The key connections are strategies at the intersection of emerging technology, land use, and innovative transportation practices. We're seeing technology enable mobility as a service, for example. What potential does that have for us? How can we harness that? Some cities have taken that and used that to replace some of their transit services by providing car share programs. We've seen bike share programs that are also in place. We talk about go zones. Go zones are more in the more densely urbanized areas where you can actually price the use of the road such that not everybody has to be on the road at the same time. These are things that we're looking to do, strategies to do in the future that would enable us to hopefully be able to be sustainable in the growth that we anticipate in our region. We're also talking about housing supportive infrastructure. How do we, as we build, make sure that we're enabling more affordable and workforce housing? And then lastly, accelerated electrification. As we are concerned with the growth in greenhouse gas emissions, one of the things that I think you'll see and we've seen in this valley has been one that's leading the effort is to move away from greenhouse gas emissions and use electrified transportation system, whether it's plug-in electric or hydrogen. We're really agnostic about the technology, but we are in fact encouraging rapid electrification. What the plan, so I'm going to talk a little bit this next two slides, I think, talk about the performance of the plan. What we expect to get if the plan is implemented is to meet our statewide required target of a 19% reduction by 2035 from the 2005 levels in greenhouse gas emissions. That's, in other words, if you take the 2005 emission levels in our region, we want to be able to reduce it by 19% by 2035. If we do the things that we are expected to do, we will in fact get to that 19% and barely just pass it. We expect that the strategies that we have in our core vision, which makes a lot of sense, the things that we have been doing, are trending towards being able to give us about 70% of that requirement, and our key connections will close the gap and give us the remaining 30%. In terms of vehicle miles traveled, the plan performs where it gives us 10% reduction from base year to 2045. And in terms of the minutes of delay and congestion, the plan also performs well by giving us a 20% reduction from base year to 2045. In terms of job creation, the plan performs in giving us the opportunity to create jobs. We think construction jobs, because of the investment in transportation, will yield, among other things, will yield about 168,000 jobs annually over time. And this will then multiply and create other jobs to the tune of about 264,000 more jobs annually as we see the economy take on the elements of the plan and the economy does the things that it would do by itself anyway. Construction jobs have always been desirable because they are well-paying jobs at about $64,000. annually, and this will be a feature. It will be a feature in what we think is our inclusive regional recovery in terms of our economy over time. Connect SoCal transportation investments can play an important role in this inclusive regional economic recovery by continuing the recovery of construction jobs with investment in transportation. You know, before COVID-19, we had just begun to get to see projects that were funded by SB1 come through, and those projects will continue to come through, albeit a little slower than we had anticipated, but hopefully as we get past and start to adapt to the virus and reduce the virus load in our communities, we'll see more of these activities come out. What this graph shows is, with the last recession, we saw a dip in construction employment. We were just barely beginning to get back to the pre-recession levels, and we think we'll get through it over time when COVID-19 hit us. So what we did, and this is one of the last set of discussions on what SCAG does. So what we did at the beginning of the recession, of the impact of COVID-19, was to take a look at what we were seeing in our economy, and we did 2 white papers, and these 2 white papers are on our website. So SCAG responded to the pandemic with immediate research and adapted existing efforts like the housing production study that we were already doing to the pandemic conditions. And then we also published these 2 white papers on our website. Our initial analysis showed that there was obviously, and this is widely reported, there was a severe job loss. We had rates in the neighborhood of 20 to 22% job loss. And we, if you look, the SCAG region in terms of unemployment rate was faring actually worse than the rest of the region of the nation, and part of that is because our region, much like Coachella, is dependent on entertainment, leisure, and those types of services. The leisure and hospitality industry itself was hardest hit, and it has the lowest wages and was hit the hardest. We saw almost a half in terms of drop in employment, from 1 million to about 500,000 between May of last year and May of this year. It went from 1 million to 560,000 from what we found in our research. By June, it had gone up to about 700,000, but we're still at about 30% decrease in employment as of June. Now we continue to surveil, and we'll probably have a report out to sort of close out our review of the effect of COVID-19 in a couple of weeks. And I say in a couple of weeks because we have our economic summit coming up, the SCAG annual economic summit coming up on December 1st, 2020. You have the 16th annual conference here. We're a little behind you. I think this is our 11th annual conference. So our initial projections showed a 26 to 38% decline in retail trade and taxable sales. And we were looking at retail trade and taxable sales because we think it's a surrogate for the revenues that a lot of our transportation agencies would be relying on. We really could not pinpoint exactly what the revenue effects was going to be, but this sort of mirrored the revenues that they were going to see. Initially, it was very pessimistic, and we were really concerned that we would lose a substantial amount of our revenues forever as a result of the drop that we saw in taxable retail trade and taxable sales. We know that the environment is slightly different now. Thankfully, it's getting better. We wish it would be a lot better. Again, we'll release some of this new data at the Economic Summit in December, on December 1st. It's still unclear if production capacity will resume at the same pace as the demand that we're seeing. Even with the shutdown, there's been some measure of demand, and that's stuff that we're going to continue to watch out for. On the transportation side, so that was the revenue side and employment side. On the transportation side, we saw a major dip in vehicle miles traveled right in the middle of April. And that was obviously indicative of the shutdown that we had. We have since seen a return to almost pre-COVID levels in terms of vehicle miles traveled. One of the things to note is while there was a dip in overall travel, and the blue line on that graph is one that represents more of travel across both state highways and local streets and roads. So this is streetlights data that we have. And so it showed a more dramatic drop in VMT because a lot of our VMT is also on local streets, and that dropped dramatically. The PEMS data, and PEMS stands for Performance Measurement System, which is a Caltrans maintained analytic tool, shows what was happening on the state highway system. A chunk of our VMTs on the state highway system, and we saw a drop of about 30% at the worst of it in terms of effects on the state highway system. That has since come back dramatically. Truck traffic dropped a little bit at the shutdown, but it stayed up because there were a lot of deliveries happening, obviously. So these things are intuitive, and the graph is showing us that. On the other hand, though, on the transit side, we saw a dramatic drop, just like on the VMT side, but we haven't seen the same return to normal on the transit side. And of course, part of that is because we were affected by the social distancing effects that you have to contend with on transit services, and people are not quite out there using transit yet. But one note to keep in mind is the transit services are there also for a lot of our frontline workers, and especially many of our disadvantaged communities. Transit is an essential service to them, and so the transit ridership being low, affecting transit properties and their capacity to sustain service will be a worry for the longer haul that we need to keep in mind. Some real focus now on some community impacts that we're seeing. In our region, we see the poorer jurisdictions seem to have a disproportionate impact of COVID-19 because of the effects on essential workers, effects on communities that are overcrowded, especially in disadvantaged communities. And given that we have 65% of our region, as the map shows, are really what we call environmental justice areas. And so our region is in focus in terms of how we deal with the extra effect of COVID-19 in terms of just sheer impact on communities of color and our ethnic minorities. In the Valley, SCAG has just recently released a COVID-19 vulnerability indicators dashboard, and this is on our website, so every single city could see what it looks like in their city. The dashboard includes more than 70 indicators of potential vulnerability at the jurisdictional level for social health, economy, and housing. The purpose of the dashboard is to provide context and insightful information for local jurisdictions and stakeholders to better understand the impacts of this pandemic as they make decisions. In the Coachella Valley jurisdictions, the impacts of revenues are obvious. About 90% of our jurisdictions rely on at least more than 20% of their tax revenues on sales, use, and transient occupancy tax. About 65% jurisdictions rely on 20% more of them rely on tax revenues and sales and use tax. Going further, these are examples of data that we can access again on our vulnerability index dashboard at SCAG. it shows that households below federal poverty level are roughly about 13% of our population here. And seniors account for nearly 20% of the population. They also are a vulnerable population for us to keep in mind. And we point these out because these then give us a sense of where the opportunities are in terms of really building back with a more resilient purpose in mind. A truly inclusive economic recovery can have tremendous impact on our economy, on our transportation, on our housing, and all aspects of life in our region, as this is really the explicit goal of what we're trying to do now at SCAG with a focus on our implementation of our Connect SoCal. An overview of our process in terms of the inclusive economic recovery is basically we're going through a listening process where we're gathering information, we're trying to see what's happening with our various communities. Our board just set up a President's Committee on Race and Social Justice. We're beginning to convene with discussions at our Economic Summit. There are several work groups that are going on and housing roundtables that we've been talking about. We've been working very extensively on the digital divide problem, and there's a working group that we've convened with the help of BizFed and some other interests such as the health and education interests. And so we expect to pull all of that together and hopefully begin to catalyze sometime mid next year to develop this regional strategy, get together our federal and state advocacy agenda as we move forward. Until the pandemic hit, the region had seen historic low unemployment, and I don't want to rehash this because I think Joe did an excellent job talking about that. The hardest hit, obviously, were areas of vulnerability for us, and so we focus on that. Low-income residents have not only seen more dramatic impacts from the pandemic directly, but they've also seen a direct impact from the slower and more drawn-out recovery. Unemployment continues to be an effect on wage, and so as we see the recovery, our intent is to make sure that we're also keeping in mind how we keep the economy resilient, such that not only do we bring back the high-paying jobs, but also to make sure that the jobs that are here are sustained and sustainable. Now, I'm going to have to skip some slides here so I can get to sort of a closing here. We at SCAG support the region, the county, and the sub-regions by funding economic studies and providing information. In 2009, SCAG did fund the Coachella Valley Economic Forecast. We also produce monthly economic reports for the region and provide more updated economic indicators, including employment, housing development, and taxable sales on SCAG's economy work page. We are, as we begin to look at the opportunities before us, affordable housing becomes one key element. We are behind in housing production in our region in general, and given the conditions that we're seeing with work at home, we're beginning to understand that this valley offers a tremendous opportunity for affordable housing. In terms of investment, transportation investment is important, and I have to congratulate Tom Kirk and the CVAC folks, and especially the leadership in this valley for the work they've done on CV Link, including my board member, Council Member Jan Harnick. CV Link will help to reduce the active transportation conflicts with motorists and provide for a safer connection to schools, employment centers, and public spaces. The digital divide is one that we're working on very hard and trying to work with local jurisdictions to improve coordination and remove barriers to broadband development. And we are working directly with ISPs, working with the state's action plan to develop model policies and resolutions for cities and counties to adopt that allows for broadband. We've done a study that was led by Ernst & Young to see how we actually could use the private sector to enable us to improve the situation with broadband, where in this valley the coverage is really low competitive intensity base, because you only have one carrier for the most part. That lack of competition can mean lack of customer choice, but it could also result in relatively high prices and low quality in broadband services. So the work we're doing on broadband is to enable all of our communities to have access to standard-based broadband, so they can be enabled to participate in the economy more fully. Coachella Valley is essential to our region. It's essential because the tourism market is unique in this region, and it's one that we've suffered a tremendous loss on. It is the largest driver in the valley and will continue to be that even after the pandemic. It's essential, but more so essential because of the potential that we see in these areas. We think healthcare has a potential in this particular economy, in this valley. Firms involved in healthcare account for about 17.5% of companies within the region. Combined with the workforce development and investment in technology, this region can be a hub for healthcare. Education, obviously, going to the knowledge-based industry. From the 2018 ACS, we know there is a disparity in education attainment between the valley and the rest of the state. That presents itself as a unique opportunity for the valley to grow, to develop a knowledge-based economy. We think the valley could also be a hub for energy, especially the solar technology that we see that's growing, and this could be where we power our economy to become more green with the help of the valley. Joe talked about the refugees from the coast. We think with all of this combined and the potential for the real estate in this market, that we can actually not only encourage folks to come here, but create a more sustainable, essential economy for this valley. There is an upside to this valley's economy. We have an opportunity with this recession, this downturn that we're seeing, to recover with intention, to diversify and be more inclusive. Again, thank you all for being with us today, and thank you for the invitation to join you today.